I would like to briefly give you an overview of why bridging the gap. That idea came across one being that I currently serve the student athletes from the campus perspective, whereas Tambria serves the student athletes directly on the athletic side, and also to helping the student athletes understand to get out of your silos. You also have resources on campus. Having that opportunity to utilize your resources on campus and within athletics. There are some institutions, colleges and universities that may not have the resources like our Power Five institution, where you have resources on campus that are underutilized. So bridging the gap is basically our program this semester, this academic school year, where we're going to try to help our student athletes to utilize their resources on campus and also as well as the resources within athletics.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And just to go a little bit deeper into that, why first generation? Why did we start here? Well, for those of you who don't know, November the 8th was National First Gen Celebration Day. And it's a celebration of students who are first generation, which is defined as students whose parents attended but did not complete, or parents did not go to college at all. And one of the reasons we thought that this was a critical place to start is because we're talking about resources. We're talking about supporting our student athletes, and they're already up against a multitude of stressors, pressures, experiences that are totally different from students on main campus. All of our students face difficulties when they're transitioning from high school to college, but our student athletes carry that additional weight from their two demanding main roles as student and athlete, along with the other relationships they're trying to maintain with their friends, their family, the community they represent. Some of them are the first in a very small or very large part of their community that are going to college as a student athlete. And so there's a lot of stress and pressure that comes along with that. And they may have the tools that they need to be successful and continue to grow athletically and be confident in that, but they don't always have everything that they need when it comes to academics. You know, we talk about the hidden curriculum, the things that aren't necessarily told to students, but are expected of students. And they get swept up into this world. And a lot of times they do need that additional time and support and consideration of their particular situations. Is their first gen experience always negative? Absolutely not. But what we want to do is create a space where we can learn and share and grow and kind of cultivate a sense of community so that our student athletes can also feel that community. And so one of the ways we thought we would do that was to bring on a former, we're not going to say how former, collegiate student athlete who was also an Olympian to kind of talk to us about his experience, what his story was, and you know, how he got to where he is today. And that guest speaker is Mr. Hollis Conway. Hollis, from his bio posted here, has obviously been one of the most dominating track and field athletes in his time and part of ours. And I still think he's a phenomenal athlete, even though I haven't seen him do a high jump in quite some time. He's a father, he's a husband, he's an ordained minister. He is one of my mentors, somebody I call when I need guidance when it comes to how to handle different situations with my student athletes. And he's also the president of Overcoming Obstacles Incorporated. It's a nonprofit motivational speaking company. He's authored 2 books, and he's served in a multitude of areas, always looking to develop and cultivate the culture and community that he's a part of. And so I thought that this would be a great experience for us all to share in his story and then have a conversation about how we can best support those first generation student athletes. This is not just about our current athletes, it's also about our future athletes. I know many of you may be first gen, and if you are, I am absolutely certain you have some expertise knowledge that you could provide to all of us. So the flow of this is going to be, Hollis is going to talk to us for a bit, and then we're going to go into a little bit of a discussion, and we'll round off with some best practices and then the resources. And of course, at the end, like I said, if you're here to the end, you have a chance to win a $25 gift card to Amazon. But Hollis, you cannot win the gift card because I already know what you're thinking. So I turn the floor over to Hollis at this time, and you can just have the floor. Take over.
Well, thank you, Tambria. I would like to say, first of all, that one of the most major resources that anyone needs, specifically me, would be an Amazon gift card. So if you can make that happen, it would solve a lot of our problems. Well, hello everybody. I know I can't see y'all, but hopefully you can hear me. If you can hear me, Tambria, nod your head because I can see you. Okay, good. So I wanted to start off with where I am at now. I am the director of Parks, Arts, Recreation, and Culture for Lafayette, Louisiana Consolidated Government. We have 27 parks, 4 swimming pools, 2 tennis centers, 3 golf courses, a performing arts center, a science museum, a nature station, 2 senior centers, and downtown parks. And so I have over 100 employees under me. Just a huge opportunity to affect life in the community in a major way. Before that, I was the director of diversity, leadership, and education over there at the University of Louisiana with Tambria, and I covered everything athletically outside of athletics. So all of the education pieces, volunteer hours, all of those type of deals. And before that, I spent 18 years as the multi-area director of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, where almost half of Louisiana, every middle school, high school, university, we did, fundraising, summer camps, campus Bible studies, those type of deal. And, throughout my whole life, I've kind of had a motivational speaking business. And so I've had a lot of journey. I've traveled to over 36 different countries, been to almost every state in the United States, and just had a wide variety of experience. I've said for a long time, I've had 3 daughters. I had 3 daughters with my wife, and then I discovered about 4 years ago that my high school girlfriend daughter was mine. She was 28 when I discovered that. And so number one, it took away my excuse that it was my wife's fault that I didn't have any sons. But yeah, so I have 4 daughters, and I went from 0 grandkids to 3 grandkids. And so, but it's been a wonderful experience. But I grew up, I look at the life I live now, and it's simply amazing because I grew up in a situation where it seemed like it would never happen. And for the majority of the people in my community and even in my family, it never did happen. I was born in Chicago, Illinois. I'm the baby of 7 kids. And my mom and dad had a volatile relationship where they would always fight. My dad was alcoholic and my mom kind of did her own thing, and they would fight. And my dad left her and went to Detroit. And then they made up and we all moved to Detroit. And then they would fight, and then they broke up and he moved to Louisiana. And then they made up and we all moved to Louisiana. And so we had this kind of breakup, makeup move there going on. And but we had a lot of drug and alcohol use in my family. So I have 5 older sisters and a brother. So I had 1 sister that graduated from high school on time. My 4 sisters and my brother either struggled with drugs or alcohol. They dropped out of school. They had babies at 14 and 15. They had been shot, stabbed, you name it. We grew up on free lunch back in the day. My only meal was free lunch program, especially during the summer. Commodities boxes, big brown box of cheese, Kaboom cereal, powdered eggs, powdered milk. Christmas for us would be getting a box from my grandmother that had socks and underwear in it. And for me, that was the norm. You wouldn't think that there was anything wrong with that. But one of the side effects of that is that I didn't know that there was anything else in the world. I only knew my neighborhood, my block, and anywhere I could walk. We didn't have anything. We didn't have cars that worked all the time. When I got older, I found out I had so many bills in my name. My mom would go through her first name, last name, middle name, last name, first name, middle name. Then she start with our names. When the phone get cut off, you just put it in another name. So I kind of grew up in that situation, not knowing anything, haven't been exposed to anything. And one of the great things about my sisters and my brother is that they always protected me. They would tell me, if we ever catch you doing drugs, we'll kill you. And I believed them. And very early on in my life, I discovered I had a really good athletic gift. I tried football, didn't make it, tried basketball, didn't make it. And I went out the track and discovered I could high jump. But I was driven to escape the situation that I was in. I didn't like being broke. I didn't like not having anything, didn't like not having anything to eat. I wasn't popular. I couldn't get a girlfriend. I was driven to escape. And I discovered athletics. And my freshman year, I wasn't very good, but by my sophomore year, I was the best in the state. And all of a sudden, people knew who I was, been getting to travel places. But I didn't know anything. My first time out of my city was a track meet when I was a senior in high school. But here I am now. I'm number one athlete in the state and the tops in the country, and I'm being recruited by colleges all over the world. And I took recruiting trips to Texas A&M. I went to Mississippi State, went down to LSU, and I decided to go to University of Southwestern Louisiana. Smooth talking coach, told me everything I ever wanted to hear in life, promised me a whole lot of stuff. And so I went to the University of Southwestern Louisiana. But my only focus was being the best athlete I could be to escape the poverty, the frustration, the disappointment, the hurt, the pain of everything I experienced as a child. But here I'm now on this college campus where, when you're recruited, you're told everything in the world, everything's good and they're going to do all this stuff. But now you got to figure life out because college was different. You got to go to class. You got to figure out what classes to take. And you got to have the resources and skills to kind of make it in a much bigger pond than you ever swam in. And so I was lucky. I will say this to today. It may not be true, but it's kind of how I felt. The better athlete you are, the more help you get. And, my freshman year, I came in and I was one of the best in college. And the next year, I was one of the best in the United States. And the next year, I go to the Olympics. So my path is different from so many athletes who come in and struggle because of my fame, people were going to go out of their way to make sure that I was successful. And so, I went to the Olympics. I came back, big parades, everything. Next year, I'm number one in the world. Next year, I'm number one in the world. I go back to the Olympics and I just have this storybook career and not making a lot of money. And, the 1 year I was supposed to sign a big contract. I built a big house, bought my wife a Lexus, and I go out the first competition and I snapped my patella tendon on my knee and I missed that whole year. And so sell a Lexus and try to compete. The next year I come back, it looks good. This is 1996. I plan on going to the Atlanta Olympics and winning a gold medal. And I tear my Achilles. I don't make the team, and then I tear my Achilles tendon, and I miss 96 and 97. So now I go 3 years with no income, and my career's gone. And this is when I began to realize the importance of why we're on this call today, because at that point I had traveled the world. I've seen things. I've been around some of the most successful people in the world. I've graduated from college, but I realized that in my mind, I was lost. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I could do. I needed a job. I didn't know what kind of skills I had. It's amazing. I went back to the people that helped me. There were so many people. We have a college. Back then it was called General Studies. I graduated in General Studies. But we had in DeCluid, they had some services for students who come from lower income backgrounds, and there was tutoring and there was counseling and there different things. And somebody mentioned to me the two words, transferable skills. I didn't know what that was. And as we began to flesh that out, I realized that, I could communicate. I've been to enough banquets. I love going to talk to kids. I knew that I could follow instructions. I could encourage, I can motivate. And they kind of guided me into a field that says, I could be a motivational speaker. People love to hear my life story. We began to research it. How do you put a presentation together? Intro, body, conclusion. What's your 3 points? Where you want to go? How do you adapt it to different audiences and those kind of things? And in a roundabout way, I picked up a lot of skills that I didn't know, and the services that provided helped me to flesh those out. But there were a lot of athletes who weren't as successful as me that kind of got lost in the shuffle and didn't recognize that. And so I lean on that now because that experience changed the future for my whole family. All three of my daughters graduated from college, whereas nobody in my family ever went to college. I only had one finish high school. My kids have a different future. And a lot of it is because of what was provided to me and changed my world, exposed me to some different things. And so the things that were important to me, I know there's some questions there. I was trying to kind of stay generic so that we can get into the discussion questions, but choosing a major, when I got there, the academic counselor, the guy that ran the department, I joined the same fraternity because of him. He changed my life. The words he spoke to me as a man, as a student. I came in, I wanted to be in engineering. And first thing he said is that I've seen your math score. You're not being in engineering. I would have had to take the remedial math and then pre-calculus algebra, pre-calculus trig just to get to my first math. I'd have had to go a year and a half before I could take my freshman courses. And understanding that information, it killed my dreams a little bit, but it also gave me focus on saying, hey, this is where you are. This is what you need to do. Try this field. So I went from, engineering to business. I went from business to general business because I couldn't pass a county. And then just talking to him, there was so many things that I wanted to do. I loved criminal justice. I love communication. I love the idea of owning my own business. He says, have you ever thought about general studies? It gives you the ability to take all of those classes and continue to move you forward. That kind of information is valuable because there's so many kids who come in with misguided dreams and hopes because they've seen things, but they don't really have the skills or the passion to follow those things. It's going to take somebody who recognizes, take the time to get to know the kids and know their heart, know where they come from, to help guide them in the right direction. To me, it's the most important thing because it's going to dictate what classes you take, who you hang out with, what the environment is like. But it's going to take somebody who cares enough to get to know that student and their journey and where they come from, to discover where their motivation comes from and whether it's misguided or not, and maybe put them on the right path. And then through that personal relationship, to give the kid the information that they need. Not only was I bad in math, everybody around me was bad in math, and there was nobody at home that was good at math to understand where I needed to be there. And maybe I was a little bit better in communication to understand electives, our thought processes, and everybody in there was like, we need the easiest electives. And so we took astronomy because we thought that teacher, he didn't take row, that's a bonus. And the tests were the same every year, and the old tests were in the library. That's a perfect scenario. You just never go to class. When the tests come up, go to the library, get the old test, you can pass it. Well, I took astronomy 3 times just to get my D to get out of it. But it was a waste of time, and I never liked it. I never thought it was worth anything until another mentor or someone on campus says, you missed a great opportunity to understand how this world works and the stars and the moon. And they said it in a way that created interest in me. You need people like that. And I think Tambria said something like the hidden lessons or the hidden curriculum. There's things when you touch a kid's heart and passion, or you expose them to things and you explain things, will go a whole lot farther than just what's in the book. But it takes people, and it takes contact and people who care, because we have to develop a trust. I came from a dysfunctional environment, and everybody had motives, and they weren't all good. And so you walk into a strange campus, and especially if you're an athlete, fan is short for fanatics, and they love you when you're doing well, and they don't love you when you're not. They come to the games if you're winning. They don't come if you're not winning. And if you have a bad play that costs the team a win, it's so much pressure on athletes to try to live up to all of that you don't know who to trust, because you feel like if things are going well, people love you because you're an athlete. And so you really need people who will separate that athletic persona from the person, so that you can build some trust and help guide them in the right direction. And I was very fortunate that I had people who, they appreciated my athletic success, but they were strong enough to say, listen, you need to do this to survive. And so I guess generally speaking, before we get into questions, I just want to say, you have to get to know those first gen students to see where they come from. Every situation is not the same. One of the biggest eye-opening experiences I had was the opening ceremony that at the 2 Olympics I went to, and just really getting to see the world, people from every country in the world wearing different colors. They look different. They were different shapes, sizes, colors. They had different features. They spoke different languages. They came from developing countries. They came from world powers. And it was just so much diversity that there's no way that you could address them. And there's no one thing that you could do to address all the issues. And I would say that with first gen students, we can come up with strategies and everything, but unless you get to know those students, there's no one solution that you can come up with that's just going to address every individual situation that you're going to face. And so I think the biggest answer is just getting to know those students. Where did they come from? What drives them? Where are their hurts and pains? And how you can give them the information that creates intestinal fortitude and internal drive that will help them overcome any obstacle that they face. Because giving them the answers and helping them through may not always be the answer. Giving them the tools to do it themselves will go a lot further in their lives beyond college, in their work career, in their marriages, in their families. So that's just a little bit of my journey without trying to answer some of the questions. So right now, let's just get into questions, because I know they'll cover more specifically some of the issue that you may want to address.
Okay.
I guess you unmute yourself.
I did. So we did have a couple of questions that were submitted, and I know Hollis is a talker, but he also likes to hear from people as well. So you guys feel free to throw your hand up. We've allotted time for this. If we want to go into discussion, it's not necessarily only Hollis can answer these questions. We want to hear from Hollis, but we also want to hear from the body, because best practices is about collaboration, and so I'm going to go with the first question, which was submitted by Tori Clark, Student Development Specialist at Texas State University. Is that right, Tori?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay. And her question was, what's the most common misconception that you think people have about first generation students or student athletes, to be more specific?
Again, I would say the most common misconception is believing all of the statistics and information that you learned about first generation students. It blanketly covers everyone. They're so different. You could have 2 kids who come from the very similar situation. They're both first generation, but those strategies may work for one and it may not work for the other. You have to take them on an individual basis. The information is a good foundation to stand on, but you have to have the flexibility or the ability to adjust to the needs of that student, because they're different. And we react to, I've had people who grew up in the same situation that I did, and some didn't make it and some did. We react differently. Stress, some people react to stress differently. Some people react to pressure differently. Some people will give up. Some people will dig in. And so you have to be able to take all of these strategies, all of this great information, and use it as a starting point, but don't assume that just because you have this great research that it's going to work with that student. You have to be able to say, okay, let me just dig in and find out who you are, and then find the best ways to apply these strategies to get you to where we know we need you, want you to go.
I do think that's an excellent point. Just to chime in before I go through the other questions. And again, everyone, feel free to participate. This spring, I had the opportunity through UL Systems to attend a Black Male Leadership Conference where we heard from Dr. Anthony Jack, who wrote the book. It's called The Privileged Poor. And he talks about students that can come from the same community and be doubly disadvantaged, where you have one student who may have had the opportunity due to their academic advantages or athletic advantages to go to a prep school outside of their community, and a student who stayed in that community, and both are now in college. And so their struggles even are different. And so we have to take into consideration what our students are going through one-on-one. We can't change their secondary education experience. We can't do anything about that. But what we can do is once they get to us, we take the time to get to know them, and to try our best to make sure they don't get lost in the shuffle, because many of us are overworked and understaffed, but we have to try to find small moments when we can connect with our students, so that we know the ins and outs of who they are, their personalities, to try to better support them based on what their reactions or their responses are going to be when they're placed into those academic environments that they're not familiar with. Did anybody else? I don't want to move on without giving anyone an opportunity to speak. Okay. The next question is kind of like 3 or 4 questions in one, Hollis. It was, and so I'm going to read all of them, and then you can just answer it with one response. And this was a question from me, actually. So the first thing I was thinking was, what does it mean to you to be first generation? But even deeper, did you even realize like that was a thing? What was the moment you realized your experience wasn't going to be like somebody else's who, you know, has parents that may have gone to college? And like, what was the biggest surprise for you, just kind of making that adjustment? I know you said the better you are, the more help you have, but I'm pretty sure that when you entered the classroom, there were some instances where you were like, what is this? So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I read that question and I literally thought, never heard the term, never was on my radar. Literally, I was just in survival mode. You don't really think about any of the extracurricular thoughts, processes, ideas, systems, and you just got to survive. And so literally, not knowing that I wasn't a morning person, and learning not to schedule a math class at 8 o'clock on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. By the time we're learning these things after you've done them, and so literally going through college, my 2 thoughts were, whatever I need to do to be the best high jumper in the world, I'm trying to, I came in saying I want to be a conference champion, and then I want to make the USA championship. I want to make the Olympic team. That's a dominating thought. You sleep, dream, eat it. That's your life. And then you got to get through school. You just got to make your classes. And so, and generally what's happening is that they catch that you're failing. You have these meetings to figure out why you're failing, and you try to make adjustments. There was no other thought. And for me, the underlying base for me was that I had nothing to go back home to. I didn't want to go back home. I tried to stay in school through every break. And so you have to think, how am I going to eat? We get together, this back in the day, and we put our money together and we go buy a loaf of bread, some meat, some cheese, and a jug of juice. And we play cards all weekend, but we never want to go back home. So your life revolved around that. So, there's no positive thoughts or feelings about my family. I know the dysfunction, not that I don't love my family, but there was not a whole lot of thought about future generations, my children, or anything like that. It was athletics. What do I have to do to school to stay eligible? And how do I eat? that was it. And so when you think about when you get those kids, I would be willing to bet there's a lot of kids that's on that campus and they're in survival mode. They're not thinking generationally. They may not even know what their future holds. A lot of them are in majors that they're not going to be a field they're going to graduate in. So unless someone grabs them and points them in the right direction and give them the tools for them to get there, we're all going to be misguided.
That's a good point. And to that, like, one of the questions was the advice you would give to the support personnel when working with first gen students. I know you mentioned that you had, was it Mr. C?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Mr. Danny Cottonham.
He pulled you to the side and was like, hey, this is not, engineering is not it for you, or these are things you need to do. So what do you think would be a good way or good strategy for us to try to pull those students in? How can we, make the most impact in those small moments that we have? What are your thoughts on that?
So Danny Cottenham is one of the most influential people in my life because he was a father figure. But I remember even before he left, when you would go back, his office would always be lined with people. There were people in there and they would just sit and talk and hang out. And so when I met him and I talked to him, we talked a little bit about academic, but he wanted to know who I was, man. He was just kind of like, he was a friend. We talked about life and things, and you wanted to go hang out and talk to him. And he created an environment where you trusted him, and then he could speak into your life, and he could say things that no one else could get away with. Um, and so I think when you engage the students, you can't think of them as numbers, statistics, or anything like that. They're people that you generally care about, and once they sense that, everything else kind of works it out. Which way you go, you'll know who you need to pat on the back, who you need to kick on the butt, who you just need to sit quietly and let cry. Because everybody felt like they could go to him and share their problems, their hurts and pains. And I know it's hard because everybody's overworked and you don't really have the time, but the more you get to know your students, the better. I'll share a quick story. I went to the state Parks and Rec conference the other day, and they had a coach speak, and he was a football coach, brand new football coach. He was assistant coach, and it was Thanksgiving, and the head coach called him and said, "Hey, what you doing?" He said, "I'm about to sit down, eat, and watch football, this and that." And he says, "Hey, come pick me up," and I'm gonna rush through it. And he says, "Come pick me up." He said, "Well, coach, I'm with my family." He said, "Don't matter, just come pick me up." So he goes pick him up, and he says, "Hey, just go down here, turn right." He's like, "Where are we going?" He said, "Just go." And he go to this restaurant, and he said, "Go get those boxes." And he load some boxes onto the back of his truck, and it was food. He could smell it, and it was hot. And he says, "Go up here." And he took him into a part of the neighborhood he'd never been into, and it was the poorest part of the community. And he said, "Turn in that driveway and go knock on that door." And he's like, "Coach, I mean, people have been shot for doing this stuff." He said, "Just go do it." He goes knock on the door, and his star linebacker opens the door, and he could see in the house that the floor had holes in it. It was cold in there. They were struggling, and he said, "Give them a box of food." And the mom comes to the door. She said, "I'm sorry, we don't have a stove. It's not working in that." He said, "Look, it's already warm. It's already hot. Take the food." He said they hugged. They were so appreciative. And when he got back in the truck, the coach said, "You'll never be either. Anybody can do strategies. Anybody can follow the plan, but you got to know the people you're working with because it's about relationships." And so my number one advice is that this is more about relationship than it is about any first generational strategy that you could put together. That stuff is good and you have to have it, but without relationship, we're going to lose more than we save.
Oh, I have a question. I know you mentioned your father figure or your male support system when you was in school. What was the female support system like? Because I know that you said that you had three daughters, and I know you talked about the dynamics between your mom and your dad. So, what female support system did you have, and how did you support your daughters as they were going through their journey in college?
I made lots of mistakes. I mean, when you grow up in dysfunction, what I had seen and what I had known was dysfunction. When you live in an environment that's drug infested, and I mean, I grew up in the hood. I mean, they were strung out. We knew that my sister came to your house, you couldn't let them leave the room. They're gonna steal something, or if they go outside, you may not see them for 3 weeks, and you're stuck with their kid. I grew up in that kind of environment. I didn't see much healthy relationship, not marriages, not anywhere. And so through college, that's where I developed relationships. Unfortunately, I learned a lot through my fraternity, which wasn't all good. We struggled, and so when I met my wife and we dated for 3 years, we've been married for over 30 years. Well, she came from a lot of dysfunction, but we kind of joined a church and we got involved in a marriage ministry and started getting better information over time. But I didn't have any strong female mentors on college. Really, there's no time. You almost don't have time for mentors because athletically, my coach was my mentor, and he was a man, and majority of my time was there. And then when you think academically, it was Danny Cottenham. And so I had female teachers and stuff when I went to class, but I learned it. Danny Cottenham taught to me as a man on how to treat women and different things, but I did not have a lot of women, strong guidance examples, until I started surrounding myself in different environments. And a lot of that happened through our church and some older seasoned married people, and just through mistakes we've made. But that's a very important question, because I don't know how to address it. I know as a man, I needed a man to speak into my life. I think there was some things as a man that I don't think a woman could have gave me, but there's some things I probably needed to learn from a woman. But I had so many deficiencies and needs. You almost kind of fill in where you can, and so I do think with my young girls that they needed a mom, and they needed strong mentorship from their mom that I couldn't give them because of my experience. And so we just through the grace of God, just surrounding ourselves with different people, we got different results. Why? And I would say this, I think this is very important. One of the things I had to learn is that you have to be careful that throughout all of this, that we don't create negative or frustrating, disappointing feelings toward our family and where we came from. I had to learn that I still love my sisters and brothers and all of their dysfunction and all of those things, not to think that I was better than them because my experiences. I mean, it's so easy because, you come back and you feel like you're better than them, or you're more educated and you're making different decisions. A lot of these first generation students, we give them all these tools, they still got to go back home. And then if they're foreigners in their own home, then we've created a real problem, because now, I mean, I've seen it, and I've struggled with that because my family felt like I was better than them, and because I made different decisions. And so at some point we have to kind of understand the environment they come from, but give them tools to survive within that environment, because not everybody's going to escape, and not everybody should escape. If everybody leave, then you devoid that situation of resources that it needs to get better. I don't know all the answers to that, but I think it's important to remember that we're not saving them from the environment. Maybe some of them need to go back and bring those tools to the environment to help their family. Very important.
You definitely dropping some knowledge today, Hollis. Very proud to know you.
Who are you again?
You might know me from my albums that have never been published, my books that no one has ever read, but one day you will know me.
Yes.
Does anyone else have, Tori, does anyone else have any questions? I don't want to take away from what anyone else wanted to contribute. If there aren't any more questions, I'm going to go back into the PowerPoint. And if anyone wants to connect with Hollis, this picture was a gem. I had a word, I have found a better one, but the face, it wasn't clear. So if anyone wants to contact Hollis, you can go to his website, hollisconway.com. His book, Yes, I Can, is an ebook. If you scan this QR code, you'll be able to access the link to be able to order that book if you would like to do so. Did I leave anything out, Hollis?
It's the #1 seller in my house.
I have a signed copy, and it is truly a treasure. I have.
Oh, thank you.
I do. And the first time that I heard you speak, it's like it's different and it's new every time. So if you all wanted to bring Hollis in to talk to your student athletes or to talk to your staff, he is an amazing motivational speaker. He talks about things that are going to provoke you to think and shift the way that you are, and to kind of enact change as opposed to staying stagnant. So Hollis, thank you so much for speaking with us and connecting with us. I have a couple more slides that I want to go through so everybody can get to that Amazon gift card, because I know that's why y'all here. And so I'm just going to proceed through the presentation, but if at any point anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourselves to say something. Oh, we already talked first gen. So these are some
Okay.
best practices.
Can I sneak out from here now?
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead if you need to.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. So guys, these are the best practices that we kind of created based on the conversations we've had. And one of these is bigger than the other ones. These are some things that professionally that I kind of live by in the way that I try to function in my position. And I'm not going to say like, this is my expression or anything like that, but these are some things that I try to do in my day-to-day life, things I've seen my mentors do. And I think a lot of us may do, but to take this with us would be very critical in the way that we support our students. So the first and biggest one, and this is something I say to my students all the time, I'm here to be a flashlight, not a crutch. You may be on a dark path. I'm here to help you light the path, but it is your path to take. I'm not supposed to carry you through the path. You know, I'm a guide for you. So I implore that each of you encourage awareness and provide navigation to decrease that codependency that sometimes they can have on us. I know a lot of times it makes our jobs easier to just do it for them and get it done because they're not going to do it right, or they're not going to do it when you ask them to do it. But when you have the opportunity, try to be a flashlight for your student athletes. Expose the hidden curriculum and talk them through things. Encourage them to get involved and take initiative. That's the next one. So their time demands are going to decrease what they can do to be innovative and to get involved. So try to help them be creative. One thing I've had to do with one of my students, she had to take a biology elective and she got to pick any elective she wanted. She didn't have time to do an internship. So I told her to take the elective with the instructor who was doing cancer research. And when she took that elective, she was able to go to his office hours on occasion and kind of observe. And then he offered for her to be able to come into the lab, not as a full-time like student worker, but at least to observe and get some knowledge. Just directing them to work on real world projects, connecting them with faculty who can give them opportunities to observe or audit their courses, and any internship opportunities. They can find their passion and their purpose and their career paths, and they can build skills that they need. Another thing I do as an instructor is require my students in my course to implement a community service project. So it's 4th grade, it's their final project, and they're required to research at least 3 different organizations in the community, either where we are in school or where they're from. And then they have to pick one of those nonprofits, a community action oriented organization, some type of service area. Like they get to pick what they want, and then they have to do research on it. They have to find out where the funding comes from, how they are funded. Are they a nonprofit? Do they have any type of tax status? Like I make them research all that information, and then they have to create a service project and implement it. They get to choose what they want to do. And what it makes them do is to step out of their comfort zone, because they have to make the calls to those offices. They have to schedule the appointments. They have to find out what the rules and regulations are for helping those different organizations to get funded. And I give them the whole semester to do it. And so if you can find a way to get creative in the way they get experiences, because they've now taken on a leadership role and they know how to do project management. So finding ways to get creative with that engagement will help them. And then keep learning yourself. Academic support has improved for our student athletes. Hollis talked about his experience and his time here. They only had 1 person on staff. Now we have a staff of 4. So while access for support has improved, we want to make sure that that support is high quality. And so we have to keep learning. Things like this give us the opportunity to grow and listen to one another and to continue to try to innovate. One thing I tell people all the time is I love trying to make something from nothing. Like I thrive in that. I want to be in that environment because it helps me to help my students to do the same thing. You may not have had all the resources, but we're going to take what you had and we're going to build on that. And then lastly, for best practices, you want to build a sense of community and a sense of belonging. Combat that imposter syndrome, encourage them to identify things that are strengths for them outside of their sport. Their sport does not define them. Their athlete status does not define them. the notoriety that comes with being a student athlete does not mean that they're comfortable in the academic world. Athletes who shy away from academics often don't feel confident in that area. And so what they'll do is like, if I'm not good at it, I'm just not going to try, right? Because when you're not good at a sport, it's not something you're going to go out and do. And they do the same thing with academics. So let them know that there's a community of support outside of the university's fan base, and try to help them to find the place where they fit the best. It may not be all the time. They may have only 1 or 2 opportunities to do so, but encourage them to continue to do that as they progress. Okay, and then I'm trying to check the chat, sorry. And then lastly, here's the link to all the resources. Hold on, go back. So the area where I get a lot of information on how to support first-gen students is the Council for Opportunity and Education and the Center for First Generation Student Success. They both have panels and webinars that you can get involved in. They also have ideas for how you can celebrate first-gen students. They are not directly connected to athletics, but those things can be modified. And again, this is a way for us to reach across the aisle to main campus. I know that on my campus, I'm a member of the community that does First Generation Week, and I am responsible for the Twitter chat. Y'all all know I do Twitter chat all the time anyway. And so that's one of the areas that I'm put in charge of at our university, but that's something that I do with main campus. It's not necessarily something coming just from athletics. And I think it's important for us to try to find ways to connect. So if you have career services on your campus, reach out to them to try to find ways to get your student athletes connected with possible mentors, or looking at interviews and resume reviews. And a lot of us do those things through our student athlete development programs, but start to look at different ways you can be a flashlight. Start looking at different ways you can learn about what's actually happening on main campus. I know that sometimes main campus does not trust people who work in athletics. And so find ways to connect with them, go to seminars that they may have on main campus when you have time, engage with the faculty when you have the opportunity, and start to build those bridges and build that trust. I'm also going to, the next slide is going to give you the opportunity to provide your email so that I can send you all of these links in the event that you didn't have a chance to scan them. So last but not least, thank you very much. We appreciate each and every one of you taking time out of your Friday, but we want to hear from you. Jacqueline and I want to make P&I as engaging as possible, because this is the part or the arm of BCC where we're trying to make sure we're giving you things that you need so that you can thrive in your current environment. So that QR code is a survey about this, and there is a question at the bottom that asks you for your name and your email. And if you include your name in your email, we will send you the resource that is the best practices resource, which was that one where I had be the flashlight. The website is also there. If you don't want it, we still ask that you will complete the survey, but if your name and email are included, your name will go in a drawing to win a $25 gift card to Amazon, but you must answer the survey by 5 o'clock on Monday. So if you don't have time to do it now, you just want to take get a screen grab so you can have the survey on your phone. It's only a few questions. Hopefully you guys will have time to do it today, but we are asking that each of you will provide that feedback so we can continue to give you engagement opportunities that will help you grow and that you feel are beneficial to you. And that's all that I have. Jacqueline, did you have anything? No? Aaron, are you still here? Are you still with us? Did you have anything?
I'm still here. I'm definitely still here. I am soaking up everything. I'm sad I can't put in for this gift card, but I'm joking. But I'm just so excited about this. This was such a good session. Tambria and Jacqueline really put in some good work to put this together and invite folks. I learned a lot just being on it. Just acknowledging some folks as well too. Jeremy, we see you. Thanks for being here. A couple of other folks, Jennifer, we see you. Jason, a couple of other folks here, Tori. I'm just looking through our list here. Folks that have been a part, are in our leadership roles or have served in aspects. We appreciate you being here. Travis, I see you, brother. PDI, classmate from some time back. Just thankful for each and every one of you for being here. Your representation really matters here in this session. We're thankful that you are here. Just looking at next week, we have a few things coming down the pipeline, still some good educational sessions coming in our ECC IPP committee on November 19th. There's a session that will be there, so please look forward to our GroupMe updates, Basecamp and/or email updates. And we also have our at-large call next week, Wednesday. So we look forward to seeing you all there if you're able to attend. If I'm missing anything, y'all, please feel free. But this was phenomenal.